Have you ever watched someone you love taken from you, not by time, but by something brutal and senseless, and felt a single, cold thing grow inside you, the need for justice? Emma felt it in her bones. Jack felt it in his hands. This is the night the forest answered back. If you're the kind of person who believes justice should be earned, even by your own hands, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what you're about to hear is a story about loyalty, loss, and a revenge that finally felt right. The forest in Montana doesn't just look old, it sounds old. There's a low, constant hum, the wind through pines, the creak of blackened branches, the far-off rattle of a creek. Emma knew every sound like a line on her palm. Jack knew them too. They'd grown up with the forest wrapped around them like a blanket. Winters that bit, summers that smelled of warm earth, and nights so clear the moon felt like a lamp hung just for them. They weren't city kids who came out for a weekend thrill. Emma's father was a wildlife researcher. He taught them how to read tracks the way other people read faces, the shape of a paw, the drag of a tail, the direction of a sprint. Jack, who'd been Emma's neighbor and playmate since they were small, learned to follow those lessons. Together they moved like ghosts among trees, respectful and careful. And then there was the white wolf. He wasn't a name on a tag or a note in a log. He had a presence, a slow, low gait, eyes like sea glass, the casual authority of an animal that had been given love and had returned it in loyalty. Emma called him Ash, Jack called him friend. To them he was neither pet nor project, he was family. Ash met them at the edge of the cabin every evening, waiting for a scrap of dinner or a warm hand, and at night he lay by the door, ears twitching when the wind changed. If you've ever loved an animal, you know how that bond lives in small things. The tilt of a head, the way a heavy paw presses against your boot like an anchor. The breath that fogs on a winter morning, a steady promise that you are not alone. That steady promise is what the forest stole from them one night. It was late, the stars were sharp and the air was thinner, colder. Emma had been checking a trail cam, Jack was mending a boot. They heard a sound first, low and wrong, a sound that didn't belong among owls and wind. A snarling that tasted of metal. Poachers, camps were supposed to be far away. But this one had been careless, and one of their prisoners, a lion, kept illegally and starved, had broken free. It stumbled into a place that belonged to wolves. Emma remembers Ash stepping between them and the sound, like he was a small white wall. She remembers the way his hackles rose. She remembers, in slow, horrible clarity, the lion's eyes going gold and empty with hunger. There was a moment, less than a heartbeat, when everything seemed to hang. The moon, a twig, Ash's last look. Then the world filled with noise. The attack was quick, brutal. Ash didn't run. He faced the lion because he'd always been brave the way some people are, not because he had to be, but because that was his nature. Emma lunged forward. Jack shouted, but there's a brutal fairness in predator violence. Speed, power, a single lethal strike. By the time they reached him, Ash was gone. Grief hits you like something physical. For Emma it was the taste of iron in her mouth, the numbness behind her jaw. For Jack it was fire, a heat that made his fists clench until his knuckles hurt. They buried Ash under a circle of stones the next day. There were flowers, clumsy prayers, and a note left by Emma that said 3 words, "We will not forget." There are people who will tell you to let it go. It was an accident. Nature took its course. Those words are like salt rubbed into a wound. Because when you love something, injustice, even framed as accident, feels personal. For Emma and Jack, the lion's presence wasn't nature. It was the result of someone else's cruelty, poachers who had traded lives for profit. So they made a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Revenge is not glamorous in real life, it's cold planning and hard choices. But in the dim light of early dawn, with snow melting and birds calling as if nothing had happened, Emma's voice was small and steady. "We find it," she said. "We stop it." Jack nodded. For Ash, they prepared the way people who plan dangerous things prepare: study, patience, tools. Jack borrowed his father's rifle, not in the way a hunter thinks of killing for sport, but as a last resort, a tool to end a threat that had already destroyed them. Emma took the tranquilizer gun from the research shed, a softer option she hoped would be enough. They watched the tracks, big, round, tearing into soft earth, followed the direction of the lion's passing. Days turned into a tense, hungry waiting. Cold bit their cheeks, supply lists were double-checked at night. They ate little, listened more. This is where the story could have folded. Many people would have gone home, changed the locks on grief and tried to live around it. But there's a different, wilder honesty in people who refuse to be passive. Emma and Jack followed their resolve into the mountains. They found the lion in a valley the fourth day, a place where the trees thinned and the rock faced the sky. He was massive, ribs showing, eyes still wild with the aftertaste of suffering. He crouched under a pinny fir, a little like a caged thing that had been let out into the wrong backyard. He didn't seem aware he was being hunted, he was focused on survival. Emma took the shot first. Hands that were trembling in private were steady in action now. The dart flew and struck the lion in the shoulder. Time, for a sharp second, slowed, the animal staggered, its head whipping around, a low rumble growing into a roar that felt like it could split stone. They weren't far. The dart hadn't taken full effect. The lion reacted like something that had been driven to its last edge. It charged, not at prey, but at the nearest living thing that looked like threat or target. Emma's breath left her as she saw it move, a blurring mass of muscle and rage. Jack raised the rifle. There are moments when everything you've rehearsed disappears and the world narrows to one point of aim. He remembered Ash's head on his lap, the way he had once rested his chin against Jack's thigh when a storm chased the sleep out of them. He remembered the grave and the flowers. He remembered Emma's whisper, "For him." The shot was clean. The bullet hit where it needed to, center, decisive. The lion's charge folded into itself. For a few ragged seconds the valley held its breath. Then the animal slid down the slope like a dropped puppet, and the echo of its last breath faded into the stones. Emma moved first, because she had to. She sank to her knees by the fallen body, and the world, that entire weight of ache and years of small mercies, unclenched somewhere inside her. She pressed her palm to Ash's grave later that day, fingers to earth, and said the thing that made the silence thick. "This is for our wolf." Jack put his hand on her shoulder in a gesture that was small and enough. "Now he can rest," he said. "Now we can try to let him." Here's the part that matters for the feeling of justice. Revenge can feel like fixing a broken thing, but it never puts everything back. It doesn't bring the dead back to life. It doesn't erase the sight of that night. What it does is make the scales feel less tilted. For Emma and Jack, the lion had been a wound caused by someone else's cruelty. Stopping it was a way to stop more pain from happening to others, to prevent the same hungry violence from taking someone else's friend. They returned from the valley changed. The forest was the same forest, older than their grudges, quieter than human fury. But something had shifted in them. They buried Ash with the reverence his life deserved, and they spent the weeks afterward patrolling, reporting, and helping bring attention to the poacher camps that had let a lion be trafficked in the first place. Revenge had given them a moment of closure, but what followed was a different kind of justice, the slow work of making sure the forest remained safer. If you're sitting with this story and feeling the rush of satisfaction that comes at the climax, that is human. Stories of wrong and right, of loyalty and retribution, connect to something deep. But there's also a quieter lesson. Love can make us brave. It can make us act when others might do nothing. It can make the difference between a wound that festers and a wound that becomes a scar you can live with.